Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work with the Political Economy Research Institute?
I'm Bob Poland. I'm co-director of the Political Economy Research Institute, and I'm also a professor of economics here at UMass Amherst.
You've recently co-authored a report called Green Growth, and that's laying out some of the economic steps that would be required to meet some climate goals that were set by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And so what motivated you and your colleagues to write this report and to do this type of research here?
It's that people that do macroeconomics, which is what I do most of the time, which is, in macroeconomics, a lot of what we're concerned about are jobs, full employment, economic growth. And generally thinking about, creating a lot of jobs or building a full employment economy, you actually want the economy to be growing so that there's an abundance of jobs getting generated as a result of economic growth. One of the environmental issues, indeed, at this point, so the overarching one, the most important one, is climate change. So the question that I had coming into it was, how can we think about a jobs program, a full employment program that's good for people, that's good for working people, that also concurrently addresses this huge ecological crisis that we face with climate change. So that was really my question. I wanted to think about how we overcome this problem that is raised all the time, that you can address environmental problems, you can address climate change, but to do so requires you to sacrifice jobs and the well-being for workers. And I wanted to think about whether we could think of an environmental program, especially one that could control climate change, that would be good for workers and good for jobs.
And so in this report, what type of time frame are you looking at, and I guess how much of a transition are you looking at from the current sort of fuel-based natural gas and coal-based economy to a greener economy?
I'm working from the standards set by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC it's known as. And they're generally considered pretty conservative in the world of climate scientists, which is natural because they're kind of a consensus organization. They take the work of hundreds of climate scientists, digest it, and try to come up with a program that reflects kind of the consensus view within these hundreds of people. So here's what they say. They say we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, absolute reduction, not a reduction in the rate of increase, but we have to cut, absolutely, emissions by 40% globally within 20 years, and we have to cut emissions by 80% globally within 40 years. We have to get a 40% reduction between 2030 and 2035 and an 80% reduction by 2050. So here's what I then said. I said, okay, I'm taking those as my goals. And I'm saying, how do you actually get there? And what is a realistic path? The challenge for me was to say, okay, let's take the world as it really is today, and let's think of a path through which we can actually get there. And now, and within that framework, what is the impact of our transition to a green economy on jobs? And well, here's one of the motivating ideas I had. It's well known, it comes up in every debate in the US around military spending. Say, okay, the government spends on the military to defend US interests. Whether those are right or wrong, that's another discussion. But in the midst of those discussions, what we always hear is military spending is good for jobs. Can't cut military spending because cutting military spending is bad for jobs. Now, let's extend that idea and think of the analogy. If we are going to engage in a large-scale program to protect the climate, and it's going to involve new investments and new research and development, comparable to military spending, why shouldn't it be good for jobs? Why does it have to be considered bad for jobs? Now, I took that as a question. I didn't know the answer, but a lot of my research was taking that analogy out of the military experience and thinking of it in terms of environmental investments.